Hola, welcome. All right. This is Dino Delano. And today we are going to cover the awakening of the biodiversity of the mind. We know that biodiversity in the environment, in the world, on the planet, has to do with species. And the more variety of species, the healthier the planet is. What does that have to do with mind? Well, what you will see as we go through this is that what we are experiencing out here with the decreasing of biodiversity, the loss of species, is also what has been happening within our own mind. We have the power to change that. For those of you who are familiar with me, my name is Dino Delano, and I have many videos up on holistic healing, on bioenergetic kinds of processes, Kundalini. I was at the forefront of the human potential movement starting back in 1972 and have taught all over the world. All right. Now, also, if you know anything about my videos, I'm not going to just give you a lot of information. Also, at the end of the video, I will cover in detail how you can bring these things about yourself, how you can cause a paradigm shift in your own thinking and in your own viewpoint, how you can bring a shift of view that will give you a sense of interconnection with the whole of life. Let me say that again. It's very important because many of us have felt in our lives at different times and so on, some more deeply than others, and I think it is a major part of why we have alcoholism or the overuse of drugs and many things, is many people feel disconnected. They do not feel a literal, and I'm not talking about figurative, which is usually only objective, only a part of rational thinking in that sense. They don't feel that deep emotional sense of connection to the whole of life. All right, let's get on with it. Holistic thinking. Most of us are familiar with a lot of the research that has been done over the years in right brain, left brain types of thinking and so on. I want to cover it here just a little bit because it will give you a better view of what we're going to get into when we talk about the biodiversity of the mind. The left brain thinks sequentially, rational. Understand, though, what rational is. Rational has to do with our beliefs. You know, at one time it was rational to believe in a flat world. Now we see that it's a round world, so now that's rational. So rational has a tremendous amount of flexibility in that sense, depending upon what we believe. Analytical goes from this to that. It's objective. It views the world from an objective point of view. Looks at the parts. Conversely, the right brain is random. In other words, I'm thinking about this one moment, I'm thinking about something else another moment. It flits from this to that. That's why we often think of it as emotional, we think of it as feminine, where the left brain we think of as rational, analytical, objective, we think as masculine, and so forth. It's not quite that simplistic, but nevertheless, it's a good analogy for what we're doing here. Right brain is holistic. What does holistic mean? Holistic really means that we see the whole. In other words, if we're a doctor and we're treating a patient, we not only treat them as a body, we also treat them as an emotional being, a mind, a person with thoughts and feelings and desires and hopes and wishes and so on. We go into all of that. We take all of that into the expression of what we're doing. We take all of that into the healing process. We don't look at the individual just as an objective piece of something. We see them, we experience them, we deal with them holistically. Synthesizing brings things together. Looks at wholes. And I'll cover more of this a little bit later when we talk and we get into art and how the right brain sees the whole of things. All right. The overtrained left brain fragments the world. I want to be very careful here because we're not making the left brain wrong or the intellect wrong or the intellect bad. In fact, the intellect is a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's a great tool for bringing things together, actually, and beginning to see the whole when it has the proper information. The information, though, that we have been feeding into the left brain is split information. The information in itself is fragmented. We have information that has them and us. We have the people over there and we have we over here. We have life and death. That's an interesting one. I'll touch on it just for a moment. We'll get more into it a little bit later. The word death means finality, end, finish. The fact is that in nature and physics, there is no such thing. But if we are mostly objective, if we are mostly left-brained, which we are, we have overtaught the left side of the brain. We have overly developed it. Since we have that sense of words and we live from the word, we live by the word in many ways, more so than most people realize, we have a sense of finality, of finish, that death is the end. That belief is at the heart of much of our dysfunction in the world, but we'll cover more of that in a little bit. Economy versus environment. In other words, it's like the economy is against the environment is against the economy. For instance, if we go into Pennsylvania, and we have all the coal companies and so on, and we have the environmentalists wanting to stop the type of mining that they're doing. But we have the people who are in that industry, who work in that industry, some of them making very good livings in that sense. They are not for that at all. They cannot see the destruction that is happening to the environment. They don't want to see it. They are like a dentist in that sense. Somebody comes along and says, I've got the cure-all for cavities, no more tooth decay, so on. Now, the dentist is not really that excited about hearing that. Why? Because it would destroy his money. He would destroy his income, so on. He would have to find, or she would have to find, something else to do. So we have that sense of one versus the other, one against the other. In other words, we have a battle going on, might be another way of saying it. The overtrained left brain disconnects us from the cosmos. It believes that the cosmos is other. It sees things rationally, objective. It looks at the world in that way. Again, that whole sense of them and us. The split brain fears death, does not relate to life as a whole. There's a lot of problems that come from that. Because if we believe, if we think, and probably more important, if we feel that death is the end, that death is the finish. Now, I know a lot of people have a belief in an afterlife. But when you get right down to it, they're scared shit of dying in most instances. In other words, having a belief, which is often verbal, which comes out of a book, which comes out of an objective idea, does not necessarily mean that it is also what? Emotional. That the person not only senses an afterlife, believes in an afterlife, but they feel it, they know it. Here's a better way of saying it, and I said this in one of my other videos. Carl Jung, before he died, was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, he said, Mr. Jung, he said, do you believe in God? And Carl Jung said, no. He said, I know. That very simple statement was immense in understanding is that he didn't believe, he knew. You see, most of us have many beliefs, but we don't know from an emotional, holistic sense of feeling and being. There is a major difference, but we'll get more into that as we go along. All right, the natural state of mind is cosmic consciousness. Wow. And wow, do we have some hoopla about cosmic consciousness. We have teachers and we have religions and so on have glommed onto this whole thing and have made it into some wild kind of thing that only happens maybe to certain people or, in specific instances. Cosmic consciousness actually is a natural state of mind. If we were to go into the Amazon jungle with Aboriginal people or into the old Aborigine before Australia was changed, or into the Aboriginals that we had here on this land, the American Indians, so on, we would find that they were cosmic conscious. Think of the word cosmic consciousness, what it says. I am aware that I am connected to the cosmos. I don't believe it. I what? I know it. I feel it. I sense it. It is a very part of my being, my intuition, my emotion, my way of being in life. A mind in unity sees and expresses the whole. That mind is cosmic conscious. So cosmic consciousness really is a natural state of mind. I have many videos up on what is called Kundalini and the awakening of Kundalini. And many people who have gone through that awakening, which we could call chi, life energy, we would probably be better used other names than Kundalini, because Kundalini oftentimes has such a connection with Hinduism and so on, and it is not a religious thing. It is part of evolution. It is a part of the human species. It is a natural process. But when it does open, many times causes havoc within the human being, because of that split mind, because of the way that we have taught and how we objectify. Because the Kundalini or the energetic or the chi process works at a process of unification, of bringing things together into a whole. In other words, right brain, left brain, one is not better than the other, but they work as a whole structure or as a whole function would be a way of saying it. All right. Fear splits the mind. We teach fear. Governments use it. Religions use it. Right? And also fear wants everything uniform. It tends toward the puritanical. If you look at American history, you'll see how they dressed, how they were, the pilgrims, so on. They were afraid of showing their skin. You could go to jail for showing your legs. And now we go to jail for being nude. I mean, we've changed, certainly. But we are still puritanical. Right? Believe that, all right? See that that really is so. We think that we are not, that we have moved out of that. Oh, much of the outer has changed, but much of the inner is really the same. And I'm certainly generalizing. This may not be true for you, but many people love control. They want things uniform. They want their children in uniform. They want people in uniform. Because uniformity means what? It means safety. Uniformity means that I don't have to deal with mystery. Uniformity means that I don't have to deal with differences. I don't want that guy on the block having clowns in front of his house like that, and those people over there that play rock and roll music, and those people over there that with red hair and earrings hanging out of their nose and so on. I don't want none of that. We want uniformity. We want it all to look the same, and then, of course, we complain when we're bored. But you get the idea of what I'm saying, because we're seeking what? Safety. When we teach fear, then there is a seeking for safety. And this is a part of the cause in our own belief systems and our own thinking that causes us to move toward control, the puritanical systems, and so on. And Puritanism does not exist just in America by any degree of the imagination. It's in many parts of the world, very powerful in China, as an example. Suppress the mystery, pushes for order, and denies spontaneity. You see, the left side of the brain, the way that it has received information, the way that we have taught it, the way that we have overused it, it does not want mystery. It wants to know the end of the story right now. I want to see the future right now. I don't only want to see the future, I want to control the future. I want my goals to bring me to that future that I see and know. I don't want a mystery. I don't want surprise in my life. And when I don't have surprise, then I feel bored. You get the picture. You get the idea. All right, the split mind kills biodiversity. Now, I'm not talking about outside, but I'm talking about inside. Because once we begin to see in a more holistic way, and I mean literally see, and feel, we begin to realize that we are not only killing the biodiversity on the planet, we are killing it within inside of us by our repetition. Because repetition serves what? Capitalism. Capitalism is a consumptive process. In order for capitalism to live, it must continually consume. Just as right after 9/11, when George Bush when the people said, well, what should we do? He said, go shopping. He meant that literally, right? Why go shopping? Keep the economy going. Because if we don't keep shopping and we don't keep consuming, we are going to destroy the economy. And they knew that, and why interest rates went down to nothing, and so on it goes, in order to re-stimulate and so forth. In other words, the fear we use is often the thing that hits us in the face and is our own demise in that sense. A rolling stone gathers no moss. I remember hearing that as a kid. That was such a wonderful statement, because what our parents and the people who brought us up were saying is that, now don't go flit from this to that, because flitting from this to that will gather no moss. In other words, you're not going to be secure. You're not going to be financially independent, and so on it goes. The truth is that a rolling stone gathers biodiversity. The person who has been educated in music and math, the person who has been educated in medicine and art, the person who is, in other words, that person who has diversified themselves, who has allowed themselves to experience dance and music and math and physics and this and that and so on, they have a biodiversity of consciousness. That biodiversity of consciousness affects the biodiversity on the planet. And you'll see that more as we go along. That will become, hopefully, absolutely clear to you, and hopefully that will begin to cause a shift, not just in your thinking, but it also brings about a shift in our perspective. In other words, how we see the world. I see that. And that's a very powerful statement, because when we say, I see that, that seeing is oftentimes not just a looking. It is not just a looking at something or seeing the picture. We see it, from the whole of who we are. We see it in feeling and emotion. Too much fear, the sensory system becomes suppressed. We've already touched on the unfortunate thing of religions, police departments, governments, and how they use it. Well, they use it in order to control the populace, because you see, the more rational we become, the more we depend upon the rational mind, objectivity, the more fearful we are of spontaneity, the more fearful we are of differences. And the more fearful we are of differences, the more we want to control. But the problems that come from that for the individual, for you and I as individuals, is that we suppress our feelings. When we suppress our emotions and our feelings, it goes something like this. I just really don't know what I want. I really don't know what I want to do. Yeah, I'm sort of happy at my job and my work, and it supports my family, and I've got a house and a mortgage and a car and so on. But I'm not really very satisfied. But I know I'm supposed to be happy. I have this and I have that and so on, and somehow or another it doesn't fit. Somehow or another it doesn't feel right. We have all the things, we have all the images, but yet something inside is out of whack. Well, when we suppress the emotions, and what emotions am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about all emotions. I'm talking about depression, and I'm talking about anger, and I'm talking about rage, and I'm talking about joy and sorrow and loss and gratitude. I'm talking about all the emotions, because we as a human being have a biodiversity. Our emotions are a part of that biodiversity. The more emotions that you and I can experience and feel and sense and are willing to have as a part of who we are as a human being makes us healthier. That's correct. It makes us healthier because our emotions move us in a direction of understanding, self-understanding, self-knowledge, self-knowing. What has happened, of course, with the intellect and the overstimulation, the overuse of that left brain, we think we can get it through rationalization. I mean, you know people, for instance, and I've certainly been one of them in my life at different times in some ways, is we have all the words, we have all the data, we have all the right ideas, and we think we got the right stuff. And oftentimes we got shit, right? We don't have the emotional health. We don't have emotional intelligence. We don't have emotional connection. And so on it goes. Again, I'm hoping that we're getting the understanding here. We're seeing a picture beginning to broaden. Also, the terrible thing that happens with all of this is that we begin to distrust in our feelings. In other words, if I am afraid of hate, if I am afraid of depression, if I am afraid of all of those what we call or consider negative feelings, I begin to what? Distrust in my feelings. I think that there's something wrong with them. Therefore, I think that there is something wrong with me. That feeling does not only act upon me, that feeling also acts upon the world in which I live, the planet, the earth. I distrust in nature. I think we should kill all the wolves and the bears and so on, or anything that I see as a what? As a threat. As many communities did in the United States at one time when they tried to kill all the rattlesnakes, and now they were overrun with rodents. And so on it goes, because we do not perceive that all of these things in our environment are necessary to the health of the planet. We also don't see, though, that all of these feelings and emotions and ideas and wants and needs and hopes and wishes and angers and joys are a part of our inner environment. Yes, when the inner environment is healthy, then the outer environment becomes healthy because we have so much of an interaction with it. Our interaction with the environment has to do with what is going on inside of ourselves. Here's another way of saying it. Oil companies, for instance, will go into the Amazon and drill for oil, but destroy the environment in the process. Why? Many reasons, really. A simplistic statement from my part is that they don't feel connected to the environment. You see, if I really feel connected, if I really feel a part of it, I'm not going to destroy it. No more than I would destroy my own child, or my wife, or my children, or my neighbor. If I feel that in some way I am interconnected, in some way that I am an emotional, feeling part of who they are. Okay? So what then is artistic thinking? Well, artistic thinking is very different in that sense. But if we combine correct information, holistic information that we feed into the intellect, into the objective mind, it then begins to work with the right brain in that sense, or that brain that sees things in the whole and the intuitive. We begin to function as a synthesis. We function as a whole human being. We see things as a whole. We function as a whole. We say, yes, I want to drill here and I want to mine there, but what is the effect on the environment? In other words, we have a literal consideration of the other, because the other is no longer other. The other is now a part of who we are. We are cosmic conscious. We are cosmic conscious. We are cosmic conscious, so we take into relationship that this individual, that animal, this plant, that river is a part of who we are. I am not separate from it. But the more separate from it that I am, the less I give a shit about the result of what takes place. Because I believe that the rational mind, the objective mind, will solve the problem. Science will solve the problem. Engineering will solve the problem. Industry will solve the problem. And we can see by what is actually taking place in the world today that that is not the case. That is not what is happening. In fact, we are on the destructive side. We have the power through a shift in thinking that many are experiencing, fortunately, that we can move it in a whole different direction. Seeing the whole, we've touched on that. The logical mind sees the sexy man or girl. The intuitive mind sees the whole person. This is a very important point because we all understand that. Wow, look at that. Ooh, isn't she sexy? Or look at him. Ooh, man, Mr. Gentleman's Quarterly, and so on, right? But when we're intuitive, we look and we say, yeah, not bad, pretty good looking, but something don't feel right about that person when I talk to them, when I get around them. In other words, we see that maybe they have the right image, but something isn't right on the inside, so to speak. It isn't right as a whole. It doesn't fit with us as a whole. Self-image psychology probably did way more damage than what it ever brought about as far as vitality and wholeness, because it made the image the thing. It made the image the right. It said that if we had the right image, we would be healthy. That's far from the truth, because image is only superficial. Anyone, literally, with a little bit of thinking, a little bit of learning, can create image. But creating connection is a whole different experience. It takes a whole different way of being and feeling in the world. All right. Right brain sees the whole picture. When the left brain is aware of the whole picture, we change our actions. We've already touched on that. In other words, if I literally see it, imagine it, and feel it, I change, I shift, I have to. Because we know that it is and we are a part of it. There is no them and us any longer. Now our intellect understands that belief and actions are interrelated. We no longer think of that as a weird philosophy, that our beliefs create our reality. We see that that is a fact, that how we think, how we imagine, affects the whole of life. Not just our lives personally, but also our lives interconnectively. Our life with everything on the planet, everything within the cosmos. As the old shamans would say, if you pluck at the web here, you move it over there on the other side of the world. So it isn't just thought, because you see in much of the New Age movement, unfortunately, we think, all I got to do is think right. That's only a piece of it. If that thinking does not move into action, if that thinking does not move into literal form, in other words, if your imagination, if my imagination does not take form in life, in other words, if I don't produce the sculpture, if I don't produce the painting, if I don't produce that garden, if I don't produce that environment of exchange and interaction with other people and so on, it has zip for meaning. It does not affect anything. It is just what I call mental masturbation in that sense. All right, I know you get the idea. Now our intellect understands that belief and actions are interrelated. We get that. So we begin to change not only our thinking, but we also change our actions. We work at doing that. We objectively get that we are the world, or I should say that we and the world are interrelated. That what is taking place in the environment, even in the weather, and all of this is a part of our environment within. That our internal environment affects the external environment. If you don't believe that, look at what's happened with the atomic plants spewing stuff into the ocean and into the air, and what has taken place and so on with all of that. If you don't believe that our actions and how we think and how we imagine is affecting the environment. It's blatant. But again, we have to create a change in our viewpoint, which causes a change in what? In the actions that we take in order to bring about a holistic effect. I love this symbol. The intermarriage of left and right. We have marriage on the outside. We have the symbols of marriage. We have the going to the church and getting married, going to the temple and getting married, and so on. But as yet, we don't have an intermarriage. That intermarriage is only really in our cultures, in our world, beginning to take place more and more at this point in time. It is beginning to happen, yes. That there is a marriage between the left and the right. Think of it in this way. Think of male dominance. Well, what we made dominant within ourselves. We have made the left brain dominant, objectivity dominant, intellect dominant. We're not saying it's wrong. We're not saying the man is wrong. We're not saying the man is bad. We are saying that we have made it dominant. And in that dominance, we have what we have. The feminine, conversely in that sense, we think of as softer often, not always, but holistic, emotional, feeling, intuitive, and so on. That part, if we look in the world, in the Far East, in America, China, all over the world, particularly in our, quote, cultured cultures, has been suppressed, has it not? I mean, you hear it all the time. The feminism and all the talk and so on. The suppression of the... When we suppress the inner dimensions of mind, when we suppress that inner environment, when we suppress the biodiversity of our own feelings, emotions, desires, wants, needs, and all of that, we suppress it externally. Because as we are trying to control it internally, we are also trying to control it externally. And right now, within the world, what we are experiencing with our wars, with our environment, our tsunamis, all of that is an expression of that inner suppression, is an expression of trying to control the internal environment. The internal control of our own inner biodiversity has controlled the outer. Not with very good results, by the way. Because you see, we really are not in control in the way that we think. We don't have the kinds of controls that we believe. Control really comes from an interacting with nature. Recognition that we are a part of nature so that we move what? More spontaneously, more intuitively. There's another one. It's kind of like cosmic consciousness, isn't it? You know, all the hoopla about that, as we said, but also the hoopla about psychic. Oh, he's psychic. Ooh, she has dreams of coming events. And ooh, Actually, that is the natural. That is a more natural way of being. That really is, in other words, the person who is, quote, psychic is not special. They are not born with some wonderful thing and they're different. They are actually expressing something that is the norm as being a human being. So to bring about that marriage. So how do we do it? As I said before, we're not just talking about how do we do it, how do we bring it about? Drawing on the right side of the brain. That was a title, by the way, of a book by the name of, written by a lady by the name of Betty Edwards. I've used the book. I used to use it when I was doing workshops all over the world and so on. One of the statements that I would make, I'd say, I'm going to teach you to draw in about 2 to 3 hours. Actually, it was less than that. And people say, I can't draw. I don't have that talent. Drawing is not a talent. Drawing is not a talent. The ability to draw is natural to every living human being, just like walking. But it does take a shift in perception. When you can help the person bring about that shift in perception, they can draw. If you want to prove it to yourself, pick up Betty Edwards' book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Take the time. Prove me wrong. Okay? Prove yourself right. And go through the first just few chapters, and you will discover aha, oh my God. Now, you may not want to become an artist. You may not want to draw for the rest of your life, but it will cause a shift in your perspective, in your understanding, and you will see that the ability is natural within you. Another better maybe way of my saying it is that the ability to see the whole and see the parts within the whole and bring it into a whole through drawing is the right of every living human being. I love it. Body movement. But I'm not talking about just body movement. I'm talking body movement that really is body motivation. Body meditation. Moving meditation. In other words, things like Tai Chi, yoga, many things of that sort. We don't move just mechanically, on the treadmill. We move with consciousness. We move with awareness. I watch these people in the gym and the magazine in front of their face. I'm not saying that it doesn't help their body. Yes, of course it does. But it doesn't really broaden their awareness. It doesn't really help them connect with what's inside. It doesn't really help them discover those parts of their body intimately. Because when you and I, through movement, through dance, through meditation, or what I call moving meditation, connect, wow, we discover feelings and emotions that have been disbanded, that have been put in the closet, that have been put away. We begin to bring into awareness a psychosynthesis. A man by the name of August Sully, who developed a technique which is called psychosynthesis, helps people through visualization and mental processes and so on to create a synthesis of mind and body. August Sully, psychosynthesis. Remember that. Might want to look it up. Might want to look into it. Good stuff. It's all about healing. It's all about becoming sane because we are teaching insanity. If you don't believe that, just look around. Just look at the insanity of it. We think that war will bring peace at some point in time. We've been believing that forever. I don't recall the comedian's name, you might, who said, trying to bring peace out of war is like fucking for virginity. How about that? I hope you see the humor now. Trying to bring peace from war is like fucking from virginity, for virginity. Okay. All right. Teach holistically. Schools don't teach holistically. They teach a dichotomy. They teach this or that. They teach right and wrong. They teach we are the best, and so on, and all of this. It is a fractional kind of teaching. These are government-run schools. Remember that. So if you want your children, if you want you to learn from a more holistic viewpoint, you're going to have to take the reins into your own hands and bring it about. The word education, the root of it, comes from one of the Latin words is educare, to bring out from within. I want to touch on this. This is an important point. You were not born empty. You were not born empty. I started doing hypnosis with people when I was 14 years of age. And I came from a family who was very objective, very fearful, and so on. You won't get into the details. What I'm getting at is that they had no knowledge of hypnosis. They could have cared less for hypnosis. We didn't have a television until I was 12 years old, so I certainly didn't learn it out of TV. That was an inner knowledge that I had, that I came with. Every human being has forms of inner understanding. To educate is to bring that out that is within. Educare. Art. To make art as important as the intellect. In other words, we're not disbanding intellect, we're not making it wrong, but we're making art equal. In other words, we're going to make the woman, the feminine, equal with the male in our own minds, in our own thinking, in our own actions, in who we are. In other words, we're going to allow ourselves to be emotional. Oh, my God. I think you get the idea, hopefully. Holistic healing. In other words, we're going to take the whole human being into account. We're not going to use just chemicals and so on. What a degrading thing the whole medical profession and pharmaceutical profession has turned into. I mean, really, you got most of the aged people, 40-some% of them, are on drugs and will be for the rest of their lives. And much of it kills many of them rather than gives them aliveness and a sense of well-being. Because we don't look at the individual holistically. We look at them as a piece of chemical, a bag of chemicals. Come on. Think holistically. Work holistically. Learn to heal yourself holistically. Now, I'm not going to tell you, like many people in the New Age movement, that this is easy stuff. You are going to have to step over, step through, step around much of your belief systems that will tell you this is bullshit. This is wrong. There's something wrong. I need to depend upon the scientists and so on. Well, look what we got. You can see what we already have by that dependence that we've put ourselves into. In other words, we have given up our own interdependence. We have given up our own integrity in the process of the worship of the objective intellectual mind. All right. Teach mental and emotional biodiversity. It is there. It's all around us. The books are out there. The information is out there. I certainly don't have all the information by any degree of the imagination. I'll talk about my book in a moment, which is chock full of information, of techniques and methods that I worked with well over 14,000 people internationally. Many of these methods have been used with millions all over the world through things like Sova mind control and many other things. The book, by the way, is called Discover the Magic in You. Go to Cool Zen Healing. There's a whole video there about the book and what you will gain and what you can get out of that information. But there is much, much also out there too. All right. Thanks for being with me. I hope you have enjoyed this. Please, if you've liked it, if it has been a benefit to you, leave a comment. Please. Thanks again. Dino Delano, CoolZenHealing.com. Thanks.